Dr. Amanda Reynolds stood motionless before the holographic display, her trained eyes catching every subtle nuance in Supreme Commander Vorax's crystalline features. The alien ruler's declaration of war blazed across every screen in the Pentagon's Strategic Response Center, their translucent forms shimmering with barely contained fury. And so, people of Earth, you will submit to the glory of the Pyraxian Empire or face complete annihilation. You have one standard rotation to surrender your world and all its resources. The crystalline being's final words hung in the air as military officials and political leaders erupted into heated discussions. But Amanda remained silent, her mind racing through years of psychological research. Something in Vorax's delivery caught her attention, a slight oscillation in their crystalline structure that her previous studies had linked to uncertainty. Dr. Reynolds, General Marcus Hayes's voice cut through her concentration. You've spent more time studying the Pyraxians than anyone else. What's your assessment? Amanda turned to face the assembled Joint Chiefs, her expression thoughtful. They're afraid, she stated, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. Afraid? Secretary of Defense William Patterson scoffed. They have a fleet of over 10,000 ships. Their smallest vessel could level a city. What could they possibly fear from us? A slight smile crossed Amanda's face as she stepped toward the central holographic display. With a few quick gestures, she pulled up her research data. The Pyraxian Empire has conquered over 3,000 star systems in their recorded history. In every single case, their tactical approach remained identical. Declaration of war, enemy response, immediate overwhelming force. She paused, letting the information sink in. But we've done something none of their previous opponents have managed. We've detected their fleet movements weeks before they wanted us to know. We've evacuated our off-world colonies without their knowledge. We've demonstrated capabilities they didn't expect, and that terrifies them. The room fell silent as the implications settled in. Admiral James Cooper leaned forward, his weathered face thoughtful. What are you suggesting, Doctor? We don't respond, Amanda said, her voice firm. No diplomatic channels, no military preparations they can detect. Nothing. We maintain absolute silence. That's insane, Patterson interjected. They'll think we're weak, defenseless. Amanda shook her head, pulling up more data. The Pyraxian military doctrine is built entirely around response and counter-response. Their strategic computer systems are designed to calculate victory probabilities based on enemy reactions. If we give them nothing to analyze, she let the sentence hang. General Hayes stood, approaching the display. We deny them the very basics of their military strategy. But what about our defensive preparations? We go dark. Completely dark, Amanda replied, her fingers dancing across the controls to display a complex strategic framework. Every military installation evacuated. Every space station seemingly abandoned. We move everything through the quantum channels we've developed. We leave them facing nothing but silence and empty space. The room erupted in overlapping conversations, but Amanda's attention was drawn back to the replay of Vorax's declaration. There, another oscillation pattern, this time matching her documented signatures for suppressed panic. They've never encountered this before, she continued, raising her voice slightly. The Pyraxians are a crystalline species that evolved in an environment of constant vibration and response. Silence, true silence, is alien to their very nature. It will trigger deep-seated psychological responses that their military doctrine can't account for. President Sarah Mitchell, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. You're suggesting we wage psychological warfare on a scale never before attempted. Yes, Madam President, Amanda confirmed. We turn their greatest strength, their rigid, response-based military doctrine, into their greatest weakness. We make the entire solar system into a psychological weapon. The president studied the data floating before them, her expression grave. After what seemed like an eternity, she nodded. Do it. Implement the blackout. Let's show the Empire that sometimes silence can be deadlier than any weapon. As the orders went out and humanity began its unprecedented disappearing act, Amanda watched Vorax's declaration one final time. The Empire had expected Earth to respond with fear, with desperate diplomacy, or with futile military preparations. Instead, they would face something far more terrifying: the dead silence of a prey that wasn't afraid, that didn't react, that seemed to have simply vanished. The first phase of humanity's greatest deception had begun. Kixtol's crystalline form vibrated with frustration as another surveillance scan revealed nothing but mundane civilian activity. From their command post aboard the Imperial scout vessel Relentless, they had spent the last 3 days analyzing data from Earth's military installations. The results defied all strategic logic. "Show me the Norfolk Naval Station scan again," they commanded, their crystalline edges sharpening with irritation. The holographic display materialized, showing the sprawling naval base. Civilian traffic moved normally around its perimeter, but inside, nothing stirred. No personnel, no ships, no movement. Yet environmental systems remained operational, and power signatures suggested routine functionality. "Impossible," Kixtol muttered, their crystalline structure resonating with uncertainty. Meanwhile, 2 kilometers beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Major James Cooper stood in the heart of Operation Ghost Protocol's command center. Massive quantum-encrypted displays showed the real-time movements of Earth's military assets through hidden channels that the Empire's best sensors couldn't detect. "Status report on the Pacific Fleet's relocation," he ordered, his voice steady despite the unprecedented scale of their operation. Lieutenant Jessica Martinez gestured at one of the displays. "The entire 7th Fleet has successfully transferred to Quantum Harbor Beta. They're completely invisible to standard detection methods, sir. The Chinese and Russian fleets are proceeding according to schedule through the dimensional corridors." Cooper nodded, watching as icons representing thousands of ships, aircraft, and personnel moved through the secret network humanity had spent the last decade preparing. On the surface, Earth's military appeared to have vanished. In reality, they were executing the largest covert deployment in human history. A priority alert flashed across the main screen. "Imperial scout vessel approaching the former Pearl Harbor location," the AI announced. "Let's give them something to think about," Cooper said with a slight smile. "Initiate protocol whisper." Aboard the Relentless, Kixtol's sensors suddenly detected a brief energy spike from the abandoned base, but when they directed full scanning power toward it, nothing appeared. Their crystalline form flickered with growing unease. "Report this to Supreme Commander Vorax," they ordered their subordinate. "Pattern matches previous anomalies at Diego Garcia and Yokosuka. Energy signatures present, but inconsistent with known human technology." The response came swiftly. "Continue surveillance. Find an explanation for these discrepancies." But explanation proved elusive. Every scan of Earth's military infrastructure showed the same pattern: fully functional facilities devoid of personnel or equipment. No signs of hasty evacuation, no evidence of mass transport. It was as if Earth's combined military forces had simply ceased to exist. Back in the underwater command center, Cooper received a transmission from Dr. Amanda Reynolds. "The Empire's psychological profile is developing exactly as predicted," she reported. "Their rigid military doctrine requires enemy forces to behave in predictable patterns. Our disappearance is creating significant psychological stress among their command structure." "Good," Cooper replied, studying the movement of Imperial scout ships. "Time to increase that stress. Authorize Phase 2 of Protocol Whisper." Across Earth's abandoned military installations, carefully prepared automated systems began their work. Lights would activate in empty buildings for exactly 3 seconds before going dark. Radar systems would power up and down at random intervals. Maintenance robots would appear on security cameras, only to vanish when Imperial observers attempted to track them. Kixtol's reports grew increasingly desperate. "Supreme Commander, we're detecting signs of activity, but no actual human presence. Our predictive analytics cannot establish a pattern." Request permission to move main fleet elements closer to conduct more detailed scans. In their flagship, Supreme Commander Vorax's crystalline form, pulsed with dark colors. They had expected resistance, defiance, or perhaps desperate attempts at negotiation. This silence, this emptiness, violated every principle of their military doctrine. For the first time in their long career, they faced an enemy whose actions they couldn't predict or understand. Permission granted. They responded finally, but proceed with caution. There is something unnatural about this silence. As Imperial warships began their careful advance toward Earth, Cooper watched from his hidden command center. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The Empire's mighty fleet, designed to crush conventional resistance, was about to face an enemy that refused to play by their rules. "They're taking the bait," he informed his staff. "Prepare for Phase 3. Let's show them just how deadly silence can be." Colonel Sarah Mitchell watched the holographic display from her command center deep within Olympus Mons, her expression neutral as Imperial troops breached the airlock of Mars Colony 1. The massive Martian volcano had been hollowed out decades ago, its internal structure transformed into humanity's most sophisticated forward operating base. Now it served as the perfect vantage point to observe their unwitting visitors. "All surveillance systems are active, Colonel," Lieutenant Ryan Parker reported, his fingers dancing across the quantum interface. "We're getting crystal clear feeds from every nanoscopic camera in the colony." The Imperial soldiers moved through the abandoned hallways with weapons drawn, their crystalline forms reflecting the emergency lighting that still functioned perfectly. Mitchell allowed herself a small smile as she watched their formation grow increasingly erratic, their training failing them in the face of the unnatural emptiness. "Play the recording in Sector 7, she ordered. In the colony's main cafeteria, the Imperial troops froze as the sound of human laughter echoed through the speakers, followed by the clinking of cutlery against plates. The sound lasted exactly 3 seconds before fading into silence. One of the soldiers spun around, weapon raised, only to find more empty tables with half-eaten meals still steaming on their surfaces. Their vital signs are spiking. Dr. Thomas Wilson, their xenobiologist, reported from his station. The crystalline structure of their bodies is showing microfractures consistent with extreme stress. Mitchell nodded. "Good. Let's give them something else to think about. Activate the footprints protocol." In the colony's hydroponics bay, the fine Martian dust that had been carefully arranged began to show fresh footprints. They appeared one by one, as if made by invisible feet, leading toward a sealed door. When the Imperial troops followed, they found only an empty room with a single coffee cup, its contents still warm, sitting on a console. Aboard the Imperial command ship in Mars orbit, Commander Zex-Nor received the initial reports with growing concern. "What do you mean the food is still warm? The colony has been silent for days." "Confirmed, Commander," the ground team leader responded, their crystalline voice vibrating with unease. "Environmental systems are running at optimal levels. We found personal items, active computer terminals, even fresh plant growth in the hydroponic sections. It's as if the humans vanished mid-activity." Meanwhile, similar scenes played out on Europa. Another Imperial team had breached the underwater colony, only to find more unsettling signs of recent human presence. In her Olympus Mons command center, Mitchell watched both operations simultaneously, coordinating with her counterpart beneath Europa's ice. "Initialize the next phase," she commanded. "Let's show them something really interesting." In Mars Colony 1, all computer screens suddenly activated, displaying normal operational data for exactly 5 seconds before going dark. In the hydroponics bay, irrigation systems sprung to life, tending to the plants with mechanical precision. A maintenance robot appeared briefly in a corridor, performing its programmed tasks before disappearing around a corner, never to be seen again despite the Imperial troops' frantic search. "Colonel," Lieutenant Parker called out, "we're getting some interesting reactions from their command structure." They're pulling back forces from several sections of the colony. Mitchell stood, walking closer to the main display. They're starting to question their basic assumptions about human behavior. Dr. Reynolds was right. The lack of resistance is more terrifying to them than any defense we could have mounted. She watched as the Imperial troops regrouped, their formations becoming more defensive. Every empty room they encountered, every sign of abrupt departure, every inexplicable sound or movement added to their growing paranoia. The mighty warriors of the Pyraxian Empire, trained to overcome resistance through overwhelming force, found themselves jumping at shadows. "Message from Europa Base," Parker announced. "They're ready to implement Protocol Omega." "Perfect timing," Mitchell replied. "Initiate the sequence. Let's give the Empire a real ghost story to report back." As she gave the order, careful preparations made over years began to bear fruit. In both colonies, carefully orchestrated events would unfold, each designed to challenge the Empire's understanding of human capabilities. The real question wasn't whether humanity could win this war. It was whether the Empire would realize they had already lost before a single shot was fired in conventional combat. "Send word to Earth Command," Mitchell ordered. "Phase 3 is proceeding as planned. The Empire is about to learn that an empty room can be more dangerous than an armed one." Admiral Michael Harrison stood at the viewing port of the U.S. Phantom, his flagship hidden within a quantum pocket dimension. The transparent aluminum showed both normal space and the ethereal quantum realm simultaneously, creating a disorienting overlay of realities. Before him, the Empire's massive fleet moved through the solar system like a swarm of crystalline locusts, their ships gleaming in the distant sunlight. "Status report on the 7th Fleet's position," he commanded, his voice steady despite the strange acoustics of quantum space. Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Torres responded from her station, her hands moving across holographic controls that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "All vessels are in position, sir. The phase shift generators are operating at optimal efficiency. The Empire has no idea we're less than a kilometer from their command ship." Harrison nodded, watching as another Imperial vessel passed through the space, his fleet technically occupied. The quantum pocket technology, humanity's greatest scientific achievement, allowed their ships to exist slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. They were everywhere and nowhere, present yet unseeable. "Begin Operation Haunting," Harrison ordered. "Let's show them what real ghost stories feel like." Across the solar system, carefully coordinated operations began. The U.S. Spectre, positioned near Jupiter, initiated a carefully calculated gravitational pulse. To Imperial sensors, it would appear as nothing more than a strange anomaly, but its effects were devastating. 3 Empire scout ships suddenly found their navigation systems showing them wildly different positions, each contradicting the others. Imperial communications intercepted. Communications Officer Jason Chen reported. "They're reporting multiple system malfunctions. Their command structure is starting to show signs of stress." Harrison watched the chaos unfold on his tactical display. The Empire's mighty warships, each capable of reducing a continent to ash, were being undone by whispers and shadows. No alarms had been triggered, no weapons fired, yet the damage to their operations was mounting. "Sir," Torres called out, "the Banshee and Wraith are in position for Phase 2. "Execute," Harrison commanded. In the belt between Mars and Jupiter, 2 more Shadow Fleet vessels activated their quantum field generators. The technology created subtle distortions in spacetime, barely noticeable individually, but devastating in concert. Imperial sensors began reporting phantom energy signatures, ghost readings that appeared and vanished too quickly to track. Aboard the Imperial flagship, Supreme Commander Vorax received increasingly disturbing reports. Another patrol lost contact near the gas giant, their subordinate reported, crystalline form vibrating with anxiety. 3 more ships reporting critical navigation failures. "Something is out there, Commander, but we cannot see it," Harrison allowed himself a grim smile as he monitored the Empire's communications. Dr. Reynolds' psychological warfare strategy was proving devastatingly effective. The Empire's rigid military doctrine had no protocols for dealing with an enemy they couldn't detect, count, or engage. "Launch the Whispers," he ordered. Throughout the fleet, tiny quantum-shifted drones deployed from their carrier vessels. These microscopic devices, operating in the space between dimensions, began their insidious work. Temperature controls on Imperial ships started fluctuating randomly. Crew members reported hearing impossible sounds in the vacuum of space. Sensor ghosts appeared on their screens, suggesting massive energy signatures that vanished when investigated. "Sir," Torres reported with barely contained excitement, "we're detecting structural instability in their crystalline forms. The psychological impact is affecting their physical integrity." Harrison moved to the tactical station, studying the data. The Empire's crystalline biology, usually an advantage in space combat, had become a vulnerability. Their bodies literally resonated with their growing fear and confusion. "Message from Earth Command," Chen announced. Dr. Reynolds reports that the Empire's communication patterns show increasing signs of collective psychological stress. They're starting to see threats in every shadow. "Perfect," Harrison replied. "Time to escalate. Prepare for Protocol Midnight." As he gave the order, the Shadow Fleet began its most ambitious operation yet. Using their quantum technology, they would create the illusion of a massive fleet mobilization. But when the Empire moved to engage, they would find nothing but empty space and more haunting anomalies. "Let them chase shadows," Harrison said quietly, watching the Imperial fleet's increasingly erratic movements. They wanted war with humanity. Instead, they'll get a lesson in fear from an enemy they can't even prove exists. Lieutenant Emma Carter sat in the heart of Cyber Command's quantum computing center, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Holographic displays surrounded her workstation, each showing streams of alien code being subtly manipulated by her team's algorithms. Their work was invisible but devastating. Digital whispers that would slowly drive the Empire's fleet into chaos. "Initiating Phase 5 of Operation Butterfly," she announced, her fingers dancing across neural interface controls. "Target the auxiliary systems first. Let's make them question everything." Around her, rows of quantum computers hummed quietly as they executed her carefully crafted code. Each machine was dedicated to exploiting different vulnerabilities in the Empire's supposedly impenetrable systems. The attacks weren't meant to destroy. They were designed to create doubt. "Ma'am," Senior Analyst Jack Thompson called out, "the first wave of entropy protocols has successfully integrated into their navigation network. They haven't detected any of our access points." Emma nodded, watching as her master plan unfolded across the displays. "Begin subtle degradation of their environmental systems. Remember the parameters. Nothing obvious, nothing they can trace. Just enough to make them wonder." Aboard the Imperial flagship, Chief Strategist Zexvor faced a growing crisis. Their crystalline form pulsed with agitation as they reviewed another series of inexplicable system failures. "Show me the pattern analysis again," they demanded. The holographic display materialized, showing thousands of minor incidents across the fleet. Each one seemed random, insignificant on its own. A 2% drop in reactor efficiency here, a slight miscalibration in life support there. Navigation systems showing positions a few kilometers off from reality. "There must be a pattern," Zexvor insisted, their crystalline edges becoming jagged with frustration. "No system fails this. Perfectly random." Back in the Cyber Command Center, Emma received the intercepted communications with satisfaction. "They're starting to see it," she told her team. "Time to let them chase the pattern. Initiate the Fibonacci sequence." New code deployed across the Imperial network, creating a subtle pattern of failures that almost, but not quite, suggested deliberate manipulation. It was a mathematical ghost, visible only to those desperately searching for meaning in the chaos. "Lieutenant," Thompson reported, Imperial Analytics Division is redirecting significant resources to pattern recognition. They're taking the bait. Emma allowed herself a small smile. Perfect. While they're chasing that ghost, deploy the real attack vectors. Let's see how their ships handle quantum-encrypted chaos. Across the Imperial fleet, systems began behaving in ways that defied their rigid military protocols. Weapon targeting systems would show phantom contacts for precisely 3.14 seconds. Life support would optimize itself to efficiency levels slightly above normal, then return to baseline with no explanation. Communication arrays would detect fragments of signals that seemed to contain meaning but dissolved into noise when analyzed. Status report from the flagship's core systems. Analyst Maria Ramirez announced, their primary computer is running at 103% efficiency, but they can't explain why. Their engineers are starting to file psychological support requests. Emma moved to a central display showing the Empire's fleet-wide communications. Their normally precise, crystalline language was showing signs of strain. Orders were being second-guessed, routine procedures were being questioned, and paranoia was spreading through their command structure like a virus. Message from Dr. Reynolds, Thompson said. The psychological impact is exceeding projections. The Empire's hierarchical command structure is starting to show fractures. Good, Emma replied, initiating the next phase of her attack. Let's push them further. Deploy the quantum mirror protocols. New code flowed through the quantum computers, creating digital echoes in the Empire's networks. Their own systems would start reflecting slightly different versions of reality, each one just plausible enough to be real, but different enough to create doubt. Ma'am, Ramirez called out urgently, we're detecting a major spike in crystal resonance patterns across their fleet. Their physical forms are starting to show signs of systemic stress. Emma studied the data with intense satisfaction. The Empire's crystalline biology, so perfect for space warfare, had become their greatest vulnerability. Their very bodies were beginning to resonate with the uncertainty they felt, creating microfractures that would slowly spread through their forms. Send word to Admiral Harrison, she ordered. The digital foundation is laid. The Shadow Fleet can begin their final approach. Let's show the Empire that in the age of information, the most devastating weapons aren't the ones you can see coming. Captain Thomas Wright stood in the command center beneath Titan's methane seas, watching as holographic representations of the solar system's defense grid sparkled to life. Each point of light represented a weapon platform disguised as natural space debris, hidden in plain sight for over a decade. The Empire had no idea they were flying through the galaxy's largest minefield. Status report on the Jupiter Defense Cluster, he ordered, his voice steady in the pressurized chamber. Lieutenant Kelly Rodriguez responded from her station, surrounded by quantum displays. All platforms are active and undetected, sir. The Empire's fleet is moving into optimal position near Europa. They still think they're investigating mining operations. Wright nodded, watching as Imperial ships moved unwittingly into the kill box. Begin Operation Solar Wind. Let's show them why you don't invade a system its inhabitants have had years to prepare. Across the solar system, carefully hidden weapon platforms began their work. Near Jupiter, a cluster of what appeared to be ordinary asteroids suddenly generated precise gravitational fields. 3 Imperial frigates found themselves caught in invisible currents, their navigation systems unable to compensate for forces that shouldn't exist. Sir, technical specialist Marcus Chen called out, the artificial gravity wells are working perfectly. Imperial ships are reporting complete navigational failure in sectors 7 through 12. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, other platforms activated. These weren't weapons in any traditional sense. They were environmental manipulators designed to turn the solar system itself into a weapon. Concentrated solar radiation, focused through seemingly natural crystalline formations, began causing inexplicable equipment failures in passing Imperial ships. Message from the observation post near Ceres, Rodriguez reported. Imperial engineering teams are breaking down. They can't explain why their hull plating is degrading in patterns that defy physics. Wright moved to the central tactical display, studying the Empire's fleet movements. Their once precise formations had become erratic, ships clustering together like nervous animals, sensing a predator they couldn't see. Every system failure, every inexplicable phenomenon, added to their growing certainty that they faced an enemy far more sophisticated than they had imagined. "Activate the resonance satellites," he commanded. Time to make their own technology turn against them. Hidden platforms throughout the outer solar system began emitting precise frequencies, carefully tuned to interact with the crystalline technology of Imperial ships. The effects were subtle but cumulative: power fluctuations, sensor ghosts, and communication distortions that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. "Captain," Chen announced, "we're getting strange readings from the Imperial flagship. Their crystal matrix is showing signs of sympathetic vibration." Wright allowed himself a grim smile. "That's because they're beginning to resonate with fear. Their crystalline technology is as much a weakness as a strength. It responds to their psychological state." The defense grid continued its relentless work. Near Saturn, a field of seemingly ordinary ice crystals began affecting Imperial sensors, creating phantom readings that sent entire squadrons chasing shadows. In the Kuiper Belt, automated platforms generated artificial solar flares that seemed to target only Imperial vessels, leaving human installations untouched. "Sir," Rodriguez called out urgently, "we're detecting a major formation change in the Imperial fleet. They're pulling back from the outer system." "They're starting to understand," Wright replied, watching the tactical display. "But they don't know what they're understanding. And that's what's breaking them. Show me the status of the Mercury defense platforms." The display shifted, showing another cluster of hidden weapons near the solar system's innermost planet. These platforms had remained dormant, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal that the Empire's retreat path was as deadly as their advance. "Send word to Admiral Harrison," Wright ordered. "The solar system has shown its teeth. The Shadow Fleet can begin their final maneuvers." As he spoke, more Imperial ships reported critical malfunctions. Their mighty weapons, designed to shatter planets, proved useless against an enemy that attacked through the fundamental forces of nature itself. The Empire had expected to face humanity's military might. Instead, they found themselves fighting the solar system itself, transformed into a vast trap by years of patient preparation. "They wanted war," Wright said quietly, watching another Imperial squadron retreat in disarray. "Instead, we've given them a lesson in why you should never invade a home your enemy has had time to fortify. Prepare the final phase. Let's show them just how deep our preparations really go." Commander David Anderson watched the quantum holographic display from his command center beneath the Pacific Ocean, the vast underwater facility humming with controlled power. The Empire's once mighty fleet had devolved into a scattered, paranoid mass of ships, their formations broken by fear of unseen threats. "Release the final wave of infiltrators," he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's ultimate gambit. "Let's show them what true helplessness feels like." Lieutenant Alexandra Nash's fingers danced across her neural interface console. "Deploying quantum-shifted nanites now, sir. The Empire's systems won't even register their existence until it's far too late." Streams of microscopic machines, developed through decades of secret research, emerged from hidden launch platforms throughout the solar system. These weren't simple robots. They were hybrid quantum entities, existing partially out of phase with normal spacetime, making them completely undetectable to Imperial sensors. Aboard the Imperial flagship, Supreme Commander Vorax's crystalline form showed dangerous signs of stress fractures. "Report status of the fleet's core systems," they demanded, their voice resonating with barely controlled panic. Their subordinates' response only deepened their dread. "Commander, we're losing control of everything. Systems are operating at peak efficiency, but responding to commands we never gave. It's as if our ships have developed their own intelligence, or someone else is controlling them. Anderson monitored the Empire's communications with grim satisfaction. "Begin Phase 2 of the infiltration," he commanded. "Let's accelerate their descent into chaos." The nanites, now fully integrated into the Empire's ships, began their insidious work. Life support systems would optimize themselves without input. Navigation computers would make minor but unsettling course corrections. Power distribution networks would route energy in patterns that were perfectly efficient but completely unauthorized. "Sir," Senior Technician Michael Foster reported, "the crystalline matrix of their command ships is showing critical resonance patterns. Their own bodies are literally vibrating with fear." In the vast holographic display, Anderson watched as the Empire's mighty vessels began to turn on each other. Paranoia had taken hold at every level of their command structure. When systems worked perfectly without input, they suspected sabotage. When computers optimized operations beyond their normal parameters, they feared corruption. "Message from the Quantum Analysis Team," Nash announced. "The Empire's communication protocols are breaking down. They're starting to question orders before they're even given." Anderson moved to the strategic overview display, studying the pattern of the Empire's degradation. Dr. Reynolds' psychological warfare strategy had exceeded all expectations. The Empire's greatest strength, their rigid, hierarchical command structure, had become their greatest vulnerability. "Sir," Foster's voice cut through the command center, "the Imperial flagship's primary systems are beginning to fail. Their crystal matrix is showing signs of complete structural breakdown." On the main display, Supreme Commander Vorax's flagship drifted out of formation, its power systems fluctuating wildly. The nanites had completed their work, creating microscopic alterations in the ship's crystalline technology that resonated with the crew's own fear-induced vibrations. "They're transmitting on all frequencies," Nash reported, a note of awe in her voice. "It's complete chaos. Every ship is reporting different readings, different threats, different system states. Their command structure is collapsing." Anderson allowed himself a small smile. "Send the signal to all teams. Prepare for the final phase. Let's show them the true cost of underestimating humanity." Throughout the solar system, humanity's hidden forces moved into their final positions. The Shadow Fleet, still invisible in their quantum pockets, surrounded the scattered Imperial vessels. The defense grid powered up to full capacity, ready to reveal the true extent of its capabilities. "Commander," Nash called out urgently, "we're detecting a critical power surge in the Imperial flagship. Their systems are cascading toward complete failure." "Perfect timing," Anderson replied, watching as Vorax's mighty vessel began its slow drift toward the sun, its crew unable to trust any system or command enough to save themselves. Humanity never needed to fire a single shot. We just had to show them that their greatest enemy was their own fear of the unknown. He turned to his command staff, his expression stern but satisfied. "Prepare the transmission," Dr. Reynolds drafted. "It's time to break our silence and show the Empire exactly what they've lost this war to." Dr. Amanda Reynolds stood in the Pentagon's Strategic Command Center, watching as the culmination of her psychological warfare strategy unfolded across the holographic displays. The Empire's once mighty fleet hung in space like scattered crystals, their ships barely responding to commands, their crews trapped in spirals of paranoia and fear. "All teams report ready," General Hayes announced, his voice carrying across the now crowded command center. "It's time to break our silence." Amanda nodded, approaching the quantum communications array. The message she had crafted was simple, but its impact would reshape galactic politics forever. "Transfer the documentation package to my station," she ordered. "Let's show them exactly what they've been fighting against." On her display, files from every phase of humanity's response assembled. Footage from the Mars colonies, data from the Shadow Fleet's operations, records of the defense grid's activation, and most devastatingly, complete documentation of how their entire fleet had been compromised. "Send it," she commanded. Across the solar system, every Imperial ship received the same transmission. The message appeared directly in their command systems, bypassing all security protocols. To Supreme Commander Vorax and the Pyrexian Empire, your declaration of war has been noted and responded to appropriately. Below you will find a complete analysis of your fleet's current situation. Would you like to discuss terms for your surrender? In the Imperial flagship's command center, Vorax's crystalline form shuddered as the data began streaming across their screens. Video feeds showed human forces had been within striking distance of their ships for weeks. Technical readouts revealed how quantum-shifted nanites had infiltrated every vehicle of their fleet. Strategic analysis demonstrated how their every move had been anticipated and turned against them. "Impossible," they whispered, their voice creating discordant harmonics in the crystal-based communication system. Amanda's voice came through next, clear and confident. "Nothing is impossible, Commander. We simply chose to fight this war on our terms, not yours. Your sensors are now showing you the reality you've been blind to." Throughout the solar system, humanity's forces revealed themselves. The Shadow Fleet phased into normal space, their advanced vessels surrounding the Imperial ships. Hidden defense platforms emerged from their camouflage, their weapons already locked on critical systems. Even the nanites within their ships became visible to Imperial sensors, showing how completely their technology had been compromised. "As you can see," Amanda continued, "we could have destroyed your fleet at any time. Instead, we chose to teach you something about humanity. We don't need to match your Empire ship for ship or weapon for weapon. We simply need to be more creative, more patient, and more willing to fight outside your expectations." On the main display, Vorax's ship continued its drift toward the sun, its systems still unresponsive to their increasingly desperate commands. Amanda's final message was delivered with almost gentle understanding. "Your ship's systems will be restored once you accept our terms. Remember this lesson, Commander. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one who matches your strength. It's the one who refuses to fight the way you expect." Earth remains silent no longer, but the choice of what happens next is yours. In the command center, General Hayes turned to Amanda. "Think they'll actually learn from this?" She watched as distress signals began broadcasting from the Imperial fleet, their proud warriors finally breaking under the weight of understanding just how completely they had been outmaneuvered. "They don't have a choice," she replied. "We haven't just defeated their fleet. We've shattered their entire understanding of warfare. The Empire built its reputation on overwhelming force and direct confrontation. We've shown them a kind of war they never imagined possible." Across all channels, the Empire's response finally came: a full and unconditional surrender. Humanity's first interstellar war ended not with a bang, but with the slow, devastating revelation that they had lost before the first shot was ever fired. "Send the acknowledgement," Amanda ordered, "and begin restoring their systems. Let's show them that humanity can be as merciful in victory as we are creative in war." As she watched the Imperial fleet begin its withdrawal, Amanda reflected on how the universe had changed. Humanity had proven that silence could be deadlier than any weapon, that patience could overcome any force, and that the greatest victories sometimes came not from what you did, but from what you forced your enemy to do to themselves.